Dear Connecticut Homeschool Network members, alumni, and supporters. From the beginning, CHN has been powered by volunteers, parents just like you, dedicated to protecting the freedom to homeschool in Connecticut. For decades, we've stood watch, provided resources, and worked tirelessly to ensure that parental rights remain strong in our state. Now, we are preparing for something unprecedented, an effort designed to strengthen and protect the freedoms of every homeschooling family in Connecticut for years to come. Because of the sensitivity of the work, we must move forward with great care. What we can tell you is this: the project is both urgent and historic, and it will directly serve the cause of parental rights and educational freedom. Here's where you come in. Imagine if every family in our community gave just $1 for each child they homeschool. Together, that kind of united support would put us in a powerful position to not only meet this critical moment, but to create a lasting impact for all. No amount is too small, and every contribution matters. Your support today ensures CHN can continue to do what has never been done before. Let's show what is possible when we stand together. On behalf of your Connecticut Homeschool Network Board of Directors, we thank you for your generous contributions.
Welcome, everybody.
Diane, are you?
You're all set, Diane.
Okay. Hi. First of all, thank you to everybody that is attending this meeting now, as well as those that are going to be listening to it in the future. We have some really important information that we want to share, and it's being shared with anybody that is interested in hearing it. And we're very grateful for that, because what we're focused on is transparency and truth. And without any further ado, I want to turn it over to Attorney Deborah Stevenson, who is going to cover some of the FOIA documents that she has received and very relevant information that we'll all want to hear.
Well, thank you, Diane, and thank you everyone who is listening to this. We entitled this Flawed Data and Failed Agencies for a reason. Flawed data refers to the Child Advocate's report, which I will get into in a moment, that is incorrectly being used to regulate homeschooling. And failed agencies is regarding all the agencies who are supposed to be doing their job and protecting children, and they're not. So earlier in this year, we had sent out some Freedom of Information requests to various people, the governor on down, and we received some information, and we've been putting it out in pieces as it comes into us. And we have a second batch of information and data documents from the Child Advocate, the state's Child Advocate, that we want to go over a little bit today. We're trying to keep this in a timely fashion, so I'm just going to highlight some things. I do have an article that explains everything. It's a little bit lengthy. You have to make a couple clicks to a PDF to get at it, but it's on our website, NHELD.us, and then you click on in the news page, and that will lead you to the latest article and copy. Waterbury. We call that the Waterbury victim. And this had nothing to do with homeschooling. This child was in the public school system, enrolled in Waterbury for 5 full years, where it was known by everyone in the school system that he was being starved. He was stealing food at school, etc. The school personnel had called DCF on multiple occasions and other state agencies to report the starvation of this child, and nothing really happened. DCF and the police went out a couple of times and talked to the alleged perpetrator with the child there. and the child was threatened by the perpetrator to say everything was okay. And the alleged perpetrator said, yes, everything's fine here. And that was the end of the quote unquote investigation. The next 20 years, this child was locked in his home, not prevented from going to school at all. There's a lot more details to that, but I just give that for some background because that's what spurred the current effort at regulating homeschooling in Connecticut. So as it happened, the FOIA responses reveal exactly how it happened that this became such an ordeal about regulating homeschooling. It turns out that the former child advocate, Sarah Egan, apparently has had a vendetta of sorts about homeschooling and the need for regulation of homeschooling for a number of years, going back at least a decade or more. And then in 2018, another horrible story happened where a child in Hartford, similar situation, enrolled in public school, having nothing to do with homeschooling, was starved by his mother. And that mother is currently in jail because finally it was revealed. DCF was told at that time, again, the agency failed to do much about it. They filed a neglect petition with the court. The court shut it down in 45-second hearing and said, well, the mother won't cooperate, so we can't do anything about it. And 2 weeks later, that child died. So at that point, his name was Matthew Tirado, and Sarah Egan was the current OCA, child advocate at the time. She did a report, and her report was all about what? Homeschooling, how we had to regulate homeschooling because this child who was enrolled in the public school system and who died on their watch under DCF knew about it again, somehow turned into a homeschooling regulation tirade on the part of Sarah Egan. So fast forward to today, in the Waterbury incident, the FOIA records show that 3 days after the story broke in Waterbury, Sarah Egan pounced on it and then notified various and sundry people, including the current child advocate, Christina Gio. And they talked over the weekend of March 15th and 16th, I believe it was, like 3 days after the story broke. So they're on communicating about this and how are we going to regulate homeschooling. Nothing to do with homeschooling, but yet there it is. So Egan went to Gio, and then Egan and Gio went to the DCF commissioner. Now, in this story, DCF is the agency in charge of saving these children, and yet DCF failed to do that in both cases. Yet Sarah Egan, and now through the current OCA Gio, are going to DCF to discuss what? Regulating homeschooling. And so then they all get together. They also contacted the governor. And when Sarah Egan and the current OCA Gio are discussing this and trying to get other support for their idea of regulating homeschooling, what they did was attached the Tirado report that Sarah Egan had done with her flawed statistics in there, all about homeschooling and the need for regulation, and sent it to the governor, sent it to the 4 co-chairs of the Education Committee and the Children's Committee, sent it to Fran Rabinowitz of CAPS, the Public School Superintendents Association, sent it to other people who are not in the government, and asked for feedback and asked for meetings. And so they had, turns out, from March 18th. Let me. This is up on the NHELD.us website, but let me just go a few details here. March 17th, 5 days after the story breaks, Egan contacted the DCF commissioner to set up a Teams call to collectively discuss homeschool regulation. March 18th, 6 days after the Waterbury story broke, Egan emailed an aide to House Speaker Matthew Ritter. You know Ritter from the removal of the religious exemption days. That same Matthew Ritter, she wanted to engage, and she said she'd like to meet with Ritter about the Waterbury case and regulating homeschooling, of course. And she attached the Tirado report with her bogus statistics to that email. Then also on March 18th, she received information back, apparently by an aide, that the speaker, Representative Matthew Ritter, quote, has deputized Representative Corey Paris, co-chair of the Education Committee, and Representative Jennifer Leeper, co-chair of the Children's Committee, to address this matter at this junction. That was from Matthew Ritter's aide, saying that Matthew Ritter had deputized Paris and Leeper to deal with this homeschool regulation issue. Then again on March 15th, that's when she contacted Fran Rabinowitz of CAPS. And this time, however, she attached a, quote, draft concept for legislative changes for regulating homeschooling, and invites feedback on the concepts from Rabinowitz and everyone else who, from that point forward, she sent an email again. Now, this one is important because on March 18th, in this one where she's sending the concepts for legislative change regarding regulation of homeschooling, one of the concepts that she has in there is astounding to me, to I'm sure most of you, but it said, quote, if the parent is not able to provide documentation of equivalent instruction through homeschooling, then her concept is that the parent must re-enroll the child in the public school. I say that again. They wanted to regulate, and if you don't follow the regulations, they're going to make sure that you are forced to re-enroll your child in a public school. So that was the first concept. And we're talking March 18th, which is 6 days after the Waterbury story broke. That's the first idea of Sarah Egan and the GO, the new OCA, to do is regulate and compel re-enrollment in the public school system. Now, the emails continue from that point forward. She contacted the governor's office, and you will see that the governor, around about that time, came out with his statement to the media. Oh, well, let's think about, regulating homeschooling. Well, that's why, because Egan and Geo were emailing the governor to do that. And he was asked at one press conference, Governor Lamont was asked, the status of internal inquiries into the actions of the state agencies responsible for child welfare about this Waterbury situation. And you know what he said? He said, I think that's ongoing. He thinks that somebody is looking into that in the state agencies. Where, when, and whatever. That's all he said about that issue. It's mainly concentrating on the homeschooling issue, when that reporter was correct to ask, what are the state agencies doing and what does the governor know about it? So then the very next day, on March 19th, the current OCA sent additional emails, including what now appears to be the first version of their actual proposed legislation, amending two statutes, 10-184, the duties of parents, and 10-220, the duties of the local boards of education, where these concepts were now contained in a proposed bill, amending those statutes, highlighted in red, and that was she named the Keeping Children Safe bill. So that's the bill, the very first one that contained the provision about compelling parents to, if they don't comply with the regulations, to re-enroll their children in the public school. So then at a certain point, the governor's aide was involved in all these meetings and discussions by email about, oh, well, let's take that first version and we'll add a bit here and we'll take away there. And these discussions went on from March 18th all the way through up until, and probably after, but my request only went up to May 5th. So I asked for all of the information from the few days before the story broke to May 5th. And we've been getting those. And guess what? All of this was going on behind closed doors. They were amending these concepts in this first draft bill. And all of that happened. And they had the bill ready on May 5th. Now, what was May 5th? May 5th was the quote unquote informational meeting that the co-chairs of the Education Committee and the Children's Committee held on May 5th. And basically they were saying at that time, well, we just want information about, is there a need for regulating homeschooling? Let's talk about it. Let's get some information. Let's call some people in who know about it. So they called in that day, as you recall, they called in, they did not call Sarah Egan, but they called in the current OCA, the Commissioner Geo. They called in the DCF commissioner. Of course, all their staff went with them. And the Department of Education, of course. And Diane and I were invited to sit on this panel. Now, at that time, all we knew was they wanted information. So we gave them information. And we answered their questions for 5 or 6 hours that day. All the while that all of those commissioners sitting there on that panel, the 4 co-chairs of those 2 committees, and the governor and other people who were part of this little cadre of people who were amending this bill had already known they had a bill ready, already had the language in it, and yet they kept it secret from the public and from anybody but their closed little group of people. So that's the gist of what we have done so far. Obviously, there's more to come. The governor's office, we had sent a Freedom of Information request to him early on. He did not answer at all. Nothing, not even a letter of receipt of the request. I appealed that to the Freedom of Information Commission, and Ombudsman is involved, and a hearing date is yet to be set. Meanwhile, after the Ombudsman got involved, lo and behold, I get an email from the governor's office. Oh, we received it and we're trying to send it to you. Well, we'll see what comes of that. CAPS also, we sent a FOIA request to CAPS. They have not responded at all. A denial, that's on appeal as well. And we're still awaiting other additional documents from the other people that we had made requests to, namely Ritter, Looney, the legislators, all of that. We've received some, but they have not provided everything yet. They have said they have more to come. So we will keep you informed about that. But that is the main thrust of why we entitled this Flawed Data and Failed Agencies, because no one to date is looking into why these agencies failed these children so badly that the latest child had to be held in captivity for 20 years until he set his own home on fire so he could escape and freed himself. So this is not about homeschooling. This is about the agencies, how they have failed these children, and why these people who are in the positions they are in the government are holding discussions behind closed doors on what? Not on why their agencies have failed. You haven't heard the governor come out and say, what happened here? DCF commissioner. Nobody is asking that. And I want to know why. I want to know why, because that's where the truth lies. They're trying to scapegoat. We said that May 5th, they're scapegoating the homeschoolers, but it goes even deeper than that. All of these documents show that the thrust has gone right to homeschooling when this has nothing to do with homeschooling, and they're doing it all behind closed doors, and that is not how the government should operate. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Diane, or whoever else wants to make any points about this.
Okay. Would Pam like to speak? I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm asking, given what you just heard. Oh, we can't hear her.
To have you unmute, Pam.
Thanks, Diane. I don't have additional information except for the information that Teach recently published about the CRHE and its work on what sounds like a very similar act, the Make Homeschool Safe Act, that they drafted and possibly presented to a closed-door UNESCO meeting. UNESCO is the UN agency tasked with implementing CRT and all the other UN agenda provisions. So I'm not surprised to see the language. I'd like to see how they arrived at that language so quickly, but we'll have to wait for some more revelations on FOIAs.
I also think I would like people to look at, if you go to the NHELD.us site and you click on I have a pretty lengthy explanation, as you just heard, but there are the actual documents, the emails, and you can see for yourself these people and look at who the emails went to, and decide for yourself if you think this is an appropriate action for these people to have taken, between the governors and governor and all the higher up legislators, not all the legislators, because that is another issue. It's just the leadership and the leadership of the committees, apparently, that were involved in this and developing this. And that's another whole issue with this. Is not the way bills should be developed. By whom? By people outside the system, even, get contact, having special connections with these people. No, it's supposed to be, our setup is that we open a session of the legislature and then we propose bills, and it's all out in front and the public has an opportunity. But if you look at these emails, and this is just a sample of some of the emails that we have received, you will be surprised. And the public needs to know and needs to see what's going on.
Okay. So at this point, in reference to those emails, there are a few things that I want to mention. The last batch that Debbie received was 399 pages, so 400 pages. Among them included was a conversation from Representative Jennifer Leeper and somebody else that we can't quite tell who it was. And they were talking about who was going to speak on May 5th. So they had confirmed that Bo Trebo was going to speak. And then it was stated, yes, can you confirm that Bo is in Connecticut? Yes, raised here, homeschooled here, and currently lives and works here. That's important. Thank you. They, meaning us, are pushing back on the organization speaking to us as being an out-of-state organization. And I would delete this thread. So I want to repeat that last part. And I would delete this thread.
That appears to be in a text.
Yes.
Is what Diane says.
That's concerning. And let's see. Yes, CRHE connected me with him, so he is affiliated in that way, but he does not work for them, and he isn't on their board as far as I know. He is someone with lived experience and not a homeschool policy expert, as I understand it. Is he with the Organization for Responsible Home Education? Yes. That's where they got the referral from. But then there was the clarification that while they connected with him through CRHE, the affiliation isn't because he's on the board or anything. Let's see, that part, I'll go over that. And in the documents, the size was very, very large, so we had to screenshot it. So I'm trying to read it from the screenshots.
While you're, can I add another little tip? Okay. The little comments in some of these emails are something that I think it's important, like the comment that Diane just read. But the governor's aide in one of the emails on March 25th is talking about introducing her comments. And she's introducing her comments in this email to multiple people. And she addresses the multiple people as team kids. So this is the governor's aide talking about, okay, team kids, let's get together again and do some more finagling around with this bill language. team kids. That struck me as very, I don't know what to say about that, but it's definitely demeaning to the public, I would think, at least, to have the governor's aide call these other commissioners and whatnot. Let's get together, team kids, and regulate homeschooling, even though this has nothing to do with homeschooling. It's remarkable. Did you find whatever you were looking for, Diane?
Yeah, I have another part that we've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. There's a couple of things. One of the pages is talking about the juvenile court back with Matthew Tirado, and DCF lacked investigative authority to meet with Matthew or his sister in the absence of Ms. Tirado's consent. And when we were at the last meeting of the working group, and DCF representatives were there, they were asked, in a situation like that, is that the end of any type of contact that can be made? If it's, or, you know, if a family is withdrawing their child from the public school to homeschool, is that the end? And we were told, no, it's not. And so that I wanted to question this, because this is what they keep saying. Well, if the child is removed, there's nothing more we can do. And that's not true, because anybody can call for a wellness check. And this was the mom, Matthew Tirado's mom, already had a history of being substantiated for abuse. So then how does it work that DCF went to the judge to close the case simply because she wouldn't open the door anyway, and then the judge agreed to that in a 45-second hearing, and the case was closed. And then a few weeks later, he was gone. So that doesn't make any sense at all. And I don't know why she wrote that, but there it is.
There are multiple things that she could have done at that point. However, in 2018, Sarah Egan was the child advocate and wrote up a report on Matthew Tirado, and basically nothing happened. There was not one person that was fired. There was not one outside investigation. And then in her report, that's when she comes up with her flawed statistics. Going back to that, what she did, she put out, and she cherry picked things, and she kind of finagled the numbers and then came up with a conclusion. So we went to, also on the NHELD website, we put out a statement about what we were looking at, because she's still using it. This is a 2018 flawed statistics that she's using again in 2025 as her basis to regulate homeschooling now. They were flawed then, they're flawed now, and shouldn't be used at all. Some of the reasons why it's flawed, we went to 3 different people with PhDs and scientists and statisticians. And some of the takeaways from our conversations after having them read her statistics are that they're inaccurate. Her figures are inaccurate and misleading, not scientifically accurate comparison to anything else. There's not an established control group. She didn't conduct a legitimate objective comparison. She didn't isolate a single variable. She picked the subset of particular homeschoolers that were reported to DCF without any explanation about why she picked that subset. She didn't identify which or how many of the sample homeschool reports to DCF were substantiated, or for what reason the families were reported to DCF. She made no comparative figures for reports made of any similar subset of public school students, and she did not provide any access to any of the raw data or records of the reports to DCF, so nobody can verify what she did anyway. So this is what she's basing. This is what Sarah Egan, through Commissioner Geo, in cooperation and collaboration with DCF, amazingly, are basing their reasons for regulating homeschooling. Nothing to do with the reality of the Waterbury child situation, which was the point, and nothing to do with investigating DCF or any other state agency for their failures.
Right. So I'm actually looking right now at these emails, like Debbie said, March 18th from Christina Gio. There it is, to Martin Looney, to Foster Hall, about the Waterbury case / homeschooling. So there, there it is. As we know, the Waterbury boy was not homeschooled, and even let's flip this. So what if he was? He wasn't, but if you're going to deal with the issue, then you have to look at the cause, and the cause was clearly system failures, as we've already gone over. And the result of that is to have sweeping over legislation for an entire community of people. There are no dead homeschoolers in Connecticut. And if something comes up and DCF is involved with a homeschool family and they're doing an investigation, well, if they got a complaint, that's no different than a public or private school family. That has nothing to do with education. It has to do with reports are made to the tune of about 65,000 per year, and they accept 46% to 50% of those. All of this data is available online. Don't listen to me. Go look at it for yourself. And out of those numbers, trying to find the number that are substantiated is nearly impossible. And again, at the last working group meeting, DCF was asked about this, and they said, well, we don't have that data. And if you research online, you'll find very little. What they did say is that their substantiation, their removal rate was 30% less than the nationwide numbers. But nevertheless, my point is, if that data isn't available, then how can you come up with all of these numbers? Well, she didn't come up with all of those numbers. She does mention substantiation at a very small rate, but when you're talking about 65,000 families are reported a year, and some of those could be the same families reported more than once. We don't know. And say half of them, 32,000 are investigated. Well, okay, let's look at that. So out of 380 students that she's talking about, 380 and 32,000, that's a very big difference. So when you start dividing those numbers and getting percentages of what the concern really is, it's quite small. And we're not saying it's unimportant. We're saying it's quite small. And again, to 5 days after the Waterbury incident, to be proposing severe overregulation of an entire state community of homeschoolers, I would not agree that that's warranted. Definitely not. And you have to wonder, what it does seem like it's a vendetta. What is going on here?
Well, what's worse is keeping all of that, what they're doing, what they're discussing with each other behind closed doors, everything in secret, so that the public has no opportunity to say anything or do anything. Why are our government officials hiding what they're doing? Why are they constantly doing it, apparently, behind closed doors, and then telling us to our face, oh, we just want information? Why didn't they be honest with us? Where's the truth here? This is not acceptable. It's not acceptable to regulate on flawed statistics. It's not acceptable to regulate behind closed doors. This is just plain wrong. I don't know if anyone has any other questions or comments, but it's just wrong.
Yeah, if anybody has questions, Jessica, I'm sure, is on that one. Right, and yeah, and even the level of proposal for regulation is just so.
Hi, Jessica, can you hear me?
Pam has a comment.
Okay, great.
Go
Go ahead, Pam.
I just wanted to comment that the kinds of regulations that we're seeing in, I'm going to take off my headset because I'm getting feedback, are similar to the Make Homeschool Safe Act template that the CRHE was working on, and the actions that they took in New Jersey, Wisconsin, Virginia, and Illinois this past year, trying to rush through legislation without public hearing, or with, in Illinois, doing a working group or study group where the only experts that presented in Illinois were CRHE. There were no other experts coming in to counter CRHE's information. And in New Jersey, they are reporting that they just filed a bill, Assembly Bill 5825, that would require homeschoolers in New Jersey to use the state curriculum. So that would include climate change, diversity, equity, inclusion, et cetera, in all K-12 classrooms. We aren't alone, and that doesn't answer our issue. It especially doesn't answer the issue because they are, as Deborah said, doing this in secret in Connecticut. We're not getting an opportunity for homeschoolers to be heard in public hearings, not only for us, but also for the other legislators who will be asked to vote on things like this. Just wanted to give that perspective.
Thank you, Pam. This is, we don't know where it's going to go from here. We are constantly going to be watching and making more requests for information. But this is totally unacceptable. Also in the bill, there's a lot of versions of this bill that they were working on behind closed doors. A lot of edits were made. We can't tell from the way they have provided the documents to us when we're talking about the iterations of the bill. So we don't know. We definitely know that's the first one, the first concepts on March 17th and 18th. But we don't know where it ended up by May 5th. We think we know, but there's a lot of provisions in there. And one of the other provisions that the public, I'm sure, would be concerned about is a provision that every year homeschoolers and private school parents would have to, if this bill gets passed, would have to go every year to the public school with their children in tow to show up there and prove that, I guess, that they're alive, that they're there, and they're either enrolled in a private school, proof of that, to show the public school, even though you've withdrawn maybe long ago from the public school. You have to show proof you are enrolled in a private school or non-public school, and proof that you are homeschooling. And they went further with the homeschoolers. I don't know why. Children are children in private school and homeschool, and you would think they'd have the same concerns about them, but apparently not. So homeschoolers have to come and show within 14 days of withdrawing, they have to have a health assessment of the child provided to the school, and they also have to have an academic assessment once a year. So this is, and if you don't do all of that, well, then they may just bring that provision back that so you have to re-enroll your child in public school. And by the way, there was a provision in one of the iterations of vaccinating all the homeschool children. They would have to be vaccinated just like the private school and public school children do. They took that out in another version. Don't know whether they're going to put it back in, what the final thing will be. But you need to know that this is what they're thinking. This is what they've written in these versions, and all behind closed doors. And in public saying something entirely different. We just need information. We just want to have a conversation. That's baloney. They already had the bill written when they said that on May 5th. So I would hope the public does go and look at what we have posted, and, make your own decisions about what to do about this. But I hope the legislators, if there are any listening tonight, or this is being recorded, if they see it before any further action has taken place, please do understand that they're hiding it from legislators as well. This is the leadership just taking power and taking control and wanting more and more control over the public without their input. So if anybody else has any comments or questions, happy to entertain them.
I would like to comment on something that I had mentioned multiple times to fellow homeschoolers, and that is at the end of the May 5th info session, the last two people to speak, which anybody can go review, it's the last two that I recall. I do think they were the last two. You can watch the video and double check. Was Cece Maher and Doug McCrory, co-chairs of Children's and Education. And to me, it was very interesting. I personally like Doug McCrory. I have worked with him before. I have found him to be respectable and to genuinely listen and have a common sense approach, not really looking to overregulate. That has been my experience, and I hope that has not been. But I remember something very clearly from both of them. It struck me. She was calling for unity, and she wasn't calling for regulation. If she's interested in regulation, so be it. Hopefully she will realize that that's not the way to go. But in that moment, she was calling for unity. And after that, Doug McCrory spoke, and he was being, he's a humorous kind of guy. He puffed up his cheeks and he said, "Oh, there's so much I could say, but I can't." And he said it a couple of times. And then he said, "Leave the homeschoolers alone. They know how to raise their kids." And I was so profoundly struck by that. What was it that he was referring to? Now, Connecticut's a small state, and it might not matter even if it wasn't. However, there have been plenty of rumors, and a number of homeschoolers and a number of non-homeschoolers have heard stories in Connecticut about legislators, especially newer ones, being tasked with things, perhaps groomed to fall in line with leadership. And later on, and if they don't, there's consequences. And they have told us that, and they've told other people that. So, how valid is that? That's a question. Are they all making that up? I personally would find that very hard to believe. However, this is what happened at the end of that meeting. Now that we've gone through thousands of FOIA documents, it's very clear that he was very much in the know about what was being planned. And that was his statement, to leave us alone. But also, there was so much he could say, but he couldn't. Well, why not? So I think, given everything that we know now, looking back on that, it's pretty obvious what he was saying. At least to me, I have my opinion about it. I think it's probably spot on. And this is really a problem with our system, and it's got to stop. And the bullying of this community has got to stop.
Diane,
We've had
there's
a couple. Oh, sorry,
No,
Deborah.
I
We've
was
had
just gonna say
some
that.
comments and questions coming in. I'm going to get to everybody. If you do have comments and questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'll try to get through everybody. I want to let Donna go ahead and comment first, since she's here on the panel tonight.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if this is what Diane was alluding to just now or whatever. She mentioned that there was some statement about enforcement. I don't know. It wasn't clear to me what they were planning to do to enforce, because most of the people I know, like if they did go through with regulation somehow and got it passed, most people are saying, well, we're not going to do it. We're just not going to do it. What are the enforcement options? Or do you have knowledge of that? Is that written somewhere in the FOIA documents that you saw, what they had plans for enforcing? Because I'm trying to think through like what would they do? And I can't.
Well, Donna, yes, I had referred to that. It is actually in the very first draft of the bill that they have, where they put in, if you do not follow the regulations in the bill, then you are compelled to re-enroll your child in a public school. That's the first enforcement action that they came up with, the very first. Not anything lesser. Nope, re-enroll the child in the public school. And they can. Pardon me?
Is that still there? Like that, or is there a different draft then after that?
There are different drafts where that does not appear, but the way they have provided them, there is no date on most of the bills. That one happened to follow along with an email, so that we could tell that was the first one. All right, but most of the others have no date, no, identification of who's saying what and taking things out. There are a few indications in the emails about who somebody wanted this in and the vaccination out or whatever, but that's our best guess. Because we've seen in emails, well, let's take the vaccination out this time or whatever, and then we see some emails with it not appearing. We're guessing that comes later, that it was not in the final one, but we don't know which one is the final one. We just know which one is the first one at this point.
Yep. So that tracks with what CRHE, with their Make Homeschool Safe Act, that's in the model legislation is, yeah, you have to re-enroll your child. But I still can't figure out, like, how would they do that? I mean, is that even logical? Like, is that even like feasible? I guess is what I'm questioning.
Well, whatever they put into law is whatever they supposedly have the authority to do, unless someone challenges it, of course, in court and says it's unconstitutional or something. But so if they put in that you must re-enroll, and then conceivably also an administrative regulation might be adopted thereafter as to how that re-enrollment might take place. And then if they identify how that re-enrollment must take place, if someone defies it, could be filing a petition of neglect, could be anything, whatever they dream up.
Okay.
All right.
I just want to make one comment. As far as the reports go, like, for the OCA, whichever one, putting it out there that there have been so many reports and 1/3 of these 6 districts, the 6 largest districts, or among the 6 largest districts, why would you cherry pick those unless you had an agenda? That's very curious. Well, nevertheless, to say that 1/3 of them had prior accepted reports, well, that's not relevant to anything else, not relative to anything else. All it says is that out of 65,000 calls that went in and 32,000 that are accepted, they were among the accepted reports. It does not say that they're substantiated. And if people do not understand how DCF works with reports, acceptances, substantiations, unsubstantiations, I believe at the working group meeting, if I recall correctly, it is less than 10% that are substantiated. So it's a very small amount. And an even smaller amount or a non-existent amount would be just within any targeted community. That kind of data is available. There are pie charts that go town by town, and it says what the allegations were for, whether it's educational neglect, and in all of them, that is minimal. So that number is really very small. And that just is an example of how these things can be inflated and sound so big, or 380 families. Yeah, over the course of 3 years, that's what, 125, 127 per year out of 32,000 that got investigated. Why is this an issue? I'm not saying it doesn't mean anything. I'm saying that it is not nearly the problem that they're claiming that it is. And if DCF is doing their job, it shouldn't be an issue at all. Because if there's a concern and there's a substantiation, then A, they found out about it, and B, the big question is, what did they do about it? Something or nothing. Nothing is Waterbury. Nothing is Matthew Tirado. Something is knowing about it and doing something about it. And all of them, like on May 5th, the Department of Ed said you cannot stop every situation. DCF said you cannot stop every situation. And the OCA is like, no, we must assure oversight. Not every family that is falling through the cracks will be caught. So there was an admission even there. Well, what are you going to do? Put cameras in everybody's house? How do we know that all these people that want to regulate us, how do we know their kids are safe? This is predictive neglect that they're talking about. We're going to have sweeping, gross regulation that curiously just happens to align with CRAG, which curiously just happens to align with the Sustainable Development Goals out of UNESCO. And if somebody gets triggered by me saying that, go look it up. It's factual. I didn't make it up. It's the truth. So we need to face these things, because I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you are an atheist, a pagan, a Catholic. I don't care who you are. They are going after every single one of the children. Nobody's exempt. So polarizing over these other issues is going to get us nowhere.
And keep in mind, they already have the private schoolers more regulated in this bill.
Yep.
All right, I want to ask some of these other questions. One of the ones that came in, can these people's secretive actions be held legally accountable? Is there any way the homeschoolers could take the people to court for basically tricking the public?
It depends on the facts of each situation. Are there recourses to this? Yes. The first recourse is to let the public know what's going on. Okay. The second recourse, okay, what, if anything, are the legislators going to do about it? Or the people who have kept it secret going to do about it? Are they going to correct their actions? Is the OCA going to retract her flawed statistics? Are they going to act to do the right thing? When and if you take any action, when would that be? What kind of action? There are actions to take, without doubt. But it all depends on the facts of each particular situation. And by all means, we are reviewing everything, rest assured, and we will continue to do so and take appropriate action as necessary.
Thank you. The next question is Secretary McMahon aware of what's going on with this in our state?
We have no way of knowing that. Everything we have done has been made public and is on our websites. if she is, I mean, she was from Connecticut, so, you know, if she happens to look into it, I suppose, but we have not contacted her directly.
I can add a little bit to that. CHN has received emails from people in the homeschool community that have connections with global newscasters and people in the federal government, and they have taken their own action to reach out. It's not CHN, not NHELD, but they have. So what fruit is born from that remains to be seen.
Thank you. All right, the next one is a comment, but I feel that maybe you could chime in on some of what we've talked about contacting legislators with this. They said, I recently wrote to my representative about my concern regarding these discussions happening behind closed doors without public accessibility or awareness. I attached the NHELD notice from a few weeks ago and never heard back. Not surprised, because my husband and I haven't heard back after reaching out numerous times since May. I'd love to see all this exposed more and send to all the state reps. I'm looking to find a way to summarize a short, better email, though, and would love ideas if anyone has any. And I know that we've talked about this before about emailing legislators. So if you guys want to chime in on that.
Well, obviously, the more legislators you can make aware of what's going on, the better. As I said before, we know that there are certain legislators who are in these emails and in on this, but that doesn't mean that all of them are and all of them know what's going on. Clearly, they don't. The members of the Education Committee and the Children's Committee, I don't think all of them know everything that we have discovered through these FOIA documents. So sure, you know, if you want to email any of our information to them, please do so. And, you know, if you have any feedback, let us know. How to make it short, that's you know, not my forte. But the gist is, did you know that a bill was already written before May 5th? That would be one point. Did you know that Sarah Egan, who is no longer a government official, prompted this entire thing by her vendetta against homeschooling, when it has nothing to do with homeschooling? The Waterbury Institute North of Toronto, why is she doing that? And she's working through Geo, the current child advocate. And why is that allowed? And why are these other people who are in the government allowing others outside the government, besides Egan, to be partaking in these closed door discussions? This is not our system of government. That's as short as I can make it at the moment, but gives you an idea.
Thank you. Did you have any comment, Diane? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think she should repeat that. Yeah, so Sarah Egan, comma, no longer a government official, was sending out an email days after the Waterbury incident to deal with homeschooling. If that doesn't raise eyebrows, I don't know what's going to.
Why didn't she send an email? She's going to send an email saying, what are you doing about these agencies who failed this child for 20 years and who made, failed Matthew Tirado and he's dead? What are you doing? And how about the 90,000 other kids who are chronically absent, truant, and missing? What are these agencies doing? Nobody has made that clear. Nobody has said anything. And if anybody should be doing that, it should be the current child advocate or the former child advocate. But no, they're not interested in the failures of the state agencies. They're interested in regulating you, homeschool parents and private school parents.
And this ties into the next comment that came in. It says, many of the other legislators that serve in education were not informed of the most recent meeting. Perhaps the real questions should be how we can improve DCF and how they can improve things for all of our children. Perhaps an understaffed and overworked staff is something that should be investigated. Connecticut cases to homeschool when it clearly, or connecting cases to homeschool when it clearly was not the issue, seems a way to deflect from a system failure that should be examined and corrected and moved forward.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I said exactly that in the very first letter that I sent to, that I wrote about this situation, and or statement to the press, whatever you want to call it. And I said at the very end, there needs to be a full investigation of these agencies. That's where the problem lies. And it ought to be investigated, whether it's an inspector general, but it has to be an objective investigation to make the corrections in these agencies so no other child dies on their watch. I haven't heard a thing about that. Nobody has responded in the government about that. Nobody has taken any action. And all these commissioners sat there on May 5th saying, oh, we do this and that, and we should regulate homeschoolers. I'm sorry, that's wrong.
I found the email. Let me go back here. Yes, Tuesday, March 18th, 10:48 a.m. Sarah Egan sent an email to Franklin Perry. I'm sure you've seen the news about the young man from Waterbury who was held hostage in his family home for decades. He had been withdrawn from school to be homeschooled, in quotes, but he was subjected to years of torture and abuse. Christina Gio, the acting child advocate, and I would like to meet with you and Speaker Ritter, if possible, to talk over the fact that Connecticut is one of the only states in the country that has no regulatory framework and oversight of homeschooling. That's not true either, which means that kids can just be pulled off the grid under the pretense of homeschooling. Homeschooling is not actually the problem. There have been several deaths and critical incidents in Connecticut over the last 10 years where this lack of oversight has been a concern. Several of us would like to change that. Christina is reaching out to some legislators on the Education Committee, but we are hoping to talk to leadership about this. Let me know. Where was the public hearing, And so with this, the accusations about homeschoolers, does it not boil down to the same thing I said earlier? If they're aware that there are families that are substantiated or end up substantiated over abuse and neglect, that's a good thing. That's showing that the system's working just like it would for any family, public schooled, private schooled, homeschooled. So anybody that has their kid in captivity is not homeschooling, not public schooling, and not private schooling. They're very unusual people that are harming their child. And that's a whole different ball of wax. It's not an education issue. It's a lack of education issue because the parents are, what can I say, crazy.
Diane, can you just verify really quick who Egan sent that email to?
Franklin Perry.
Thank you.
Yeah. CGA.gov. Yeah.
All right. Attorney Stevenson said re-enroll. What if they were never enrolled? What does this apply to only those children withdrawn from school or to all homeschooled children?
Well, the bill said re-enroll, but that does not preclude them changing that to add children who had never been in. They must, because they would be homeschoolers under the bill, and they must come in every year and follow the regulations. And if they don't, presumably they could amend that to include that too. But that part is not contained in what we have seen so far.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a quick question about that, Debbie. I thought, and I could be wrong, I thought I read that if a family fails to appear on an annual basis for a portfolio review or assessment or whatever it is that would be in their final, because they mentioned several things, then that student would be forced to re-enroll. But in the beginning, the way it's stated is it would apply to all children that would be doing their end of year, whatever it is. And if
Right.
if they failed to appear in person, then they
Mhm.
would have to re-enroll or enroll.
Yeah, it's just that the term or enroll does not appear yet.
Mhm. But it does say all of the children would have to appear every year. I
Yes.
mean, it's possible that that was, I don't want to say a typo, but a little bit of a glitch because those two things are
Keep
there.
keep in mind, Diane, that appears to be the very first draft. So who knows?
All right. The next question is, can you explain the timeline of when Biggins decided to end the working group? Was it after the resignation of the DCF commissioner?
The timeline of that was as follows. We attended the second meeting of the working group, and in which the DCF commissioner was supposed to appear but did not. Her staff did instead, and we were not allowed to ask even questions of the staff. So when the formal part of the meeting had appeared to end, we started questioning Biggins, Representative Biggins. Why didn't the commissioner appear? All sorts of questions about, why can't we ask questions of them, et cetera, et cetera. DCF staff then walked out and the meeting was ended. That evening, we heard through the grapevine that the commissioner was resigning. The very next day, it came out in the news that she was resigning. And thereafter, a week or so after that, Representative Biggins then canceled all further working group meetings.
All right. Thank you for that. Next one is a question slash comment, and it also ties into a question I had as well. Is Representative Constantine in any of those emails? And my question to go along with that is, would there be in the future a list presented from your office, Deborah, that shows who was involved, perhaps a list or something of who was involved in these things behind the scenes? Because it's hard for us to tell, I think, who knew and who didn't, who was aware and who didn't. But the person goes on to say, if not, she may be one of the legislators on the education committee who was unaware, in which case I might be sending her links to the article and replay of this to see if she has any integrity.
Well, yeah, that last part would be good, but Representative Constantine, it does not appear on the emails that I have seen so far. It appears to be the co-chairs of the committees that are on the emails, and the commissioners, et cetera, and some aides. However, the part where, making a list of them, I would say that what we did in this version is we attached as a PDF that has a link to the PDF on NHELD.us, that you can see all of the emails, that the important ones that we're describing for yourself. There's maybe 20 or 30 pages that we put in out of the 399. But the same names keep popping up and repeatedly throughout the emails that we've seen. And so far, that's pretty much been the aides and the leadership and the commissioners and a few of these outside people. Go ahead.
And Diane, that was the link that I posted for everyone, correct, in the comments? Okay. I'll share that again before we leave for the evening so you guys can grab it at the end. I know sometimes it's distracting to listen and click. The next question, was the DCF meeting recorded?
You mean the working group? I'm not sure which DCF meeting.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. It just says, was the DCF meeting recorded? I do know that there was a meeting about DCF that wasn't necessarily about homeschooling that happened. What was it? Was it last week, Diane, or maybe the week before? That was on CTN, but I'm not sure about. Yeah, I think it was, yes, the working group she's talking about.
Okay. In the working group, no, we had tried from the very get-go to get a CTN to cover it, to have it recorded so that the public could at least see what was going on there. However, Representative Biggins intentionally had the meetings held in the very small conference rooms where CTN did not have cameras. And on top of that, he would not allow it to be recorded. The second meeting, some people had recorded parts of the first meeting, but the second meeting, he absolutely refused to allow any recording of that. So no.
All right. Someone else asked, it seems that more school districts are attempting to enforce notice of intents this year. Could they have been instructed to do so?
Well, I quite likely, because why? Whose name appears on all of these emails repeatedly? Fran Rabinowitz, the executive director of the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents. And I believe I saw at least one email from another superintendent or discussing with another superintendent. So more than likely, she filtered down whatever was going on to whomever she felt like. I have no idea, but that would be my guess, that there's some talk at least going on about that. Of course, she hasn't provided us with any responses to our FOIA request, but that's on appeal.
Was the cancellation for working group announced by Biggins via email to those interested in the working group?
It was announced to the members, the invitees of the working group. I have no idea if it went any further, but we were notified of it.
Okay. And that's all the questions that have come in.
Okay. Well, it's almost exactly on time for our time limit here. We wanted to keep it short and sweet this time. If you do have any other questions about anything you see after reading the most recent document we put out there, you can always email us and be happy to answer any questions. And we will continue to keep everything we find out very, very public so everyone knows, because that's the right thing to do. So thank you, everyone, for attending. Please keep in touch.
And Diane, did you want to mention next week?
Yeah. One of the things that happened is, as far as inviting legislators to this meeting, there were some unexpected glitches that happened. And there were people that didn't get notified. There were people that were unable to attend, that very much wanted to attend because there were several other events happening this evening. So we have, like I said earlier, we've gone through thousands of documents. There's more to say. We're trying to do it in coordinated chunks of information. So now, we focused on this topic, but there's more. And we also want to give the people that will be looking at the recording time to view it and then discuss it and come up with their own questions. And so we're going to have a part 2 to tonight's meeting, and that's scheduled for next Friday, September 12th at 8:30 p.m. for 1 hour.
All right, and I put that information on the screen for everybody. If you're on computer and you're able to scan it with your phone, it's also a short link that I've put in the comments that you can go ahead and get registered for that webinar. And I just want to say, for logistics purposes, even if you don't think you can attend live, if you go ahead and register, you will automatically be sent the replay link to watch. So don't worry about if you can't come live. Go ahead and register, and then we can get you the replay in a more timely manner than sometimes we can, responding on social media and things like that. So that's the link on the screen with the QR code. The link is also in the comments. And in addition, when you get the replays back, you are able to see the comments as well, so that you're able to click those links in case you missed them during the meeting. For example, Attorney Stevenson's article link and that sort of thing. So all of that's there for you as well. Somebody was asking about donating. We will play that video again at the end for you also. Let's see. Donna has an audio recording of the second working group, just the DCF part, not the discussion, but she comments that it was pretty worthless because DCF answers were basically canned policy statements.
Right. This, you know what, can I just quickly say this? On May 5th, when Debbie and I had been invited to attend that 6-hour information session, we were giving 0 to go on. We asked, what is this for? You know, like, what do we focus on? And homeschooling, you can talk about so many different angles of it, right? Just homeschooling, that's it, just homeschooling. So, okay, fine, we did it. You know, we were in the hot seat for 6 hours. We didn't pull a no-show. We didn't do anything like that. However, when you turn that around, they have not been available. They have not been available to ask questions to be in the hot seat for 6 hours and address the questions that we would have for them. You know, this is totally ridiculous. And then on top of it, it was a scam anyway, because they were already meeting, and even people like some of the aides and I believe the secretary, when the emails were going back and forth, they were commenting. Like, they're not legislators. Why were they commenting on what they thought should or shouldn't be part of a bill? This is really like an inside, dare I say, cult? Question mark. There, I said it, because I'm not the only one that's been thinking it. It's like, you know, the best buddies, we're all going to get together and we're going to do this. And I mean, this is what our government has come to.
No,
So,
it's team, not best buddies, team kids. Remember?
Team kids. In the emails, they referred to it as team kids. I mean, you know what? Grow up, resign, do something. Just, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. That's where we're at. So, you know, we have more information, and based on the questions tonight, we'll be putting more things together for next Friday, for sure. Yep.
All right.
So,
I think
if you, last thing, if you want to donate to NHELD, you can do so either on the website or by sending any donation to Post Office Box 704, Southbury, Connecticut 06488. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to go ahead and put that link down below just for people to have that, and also on the replay. So you can donate to NHELD there. And is that it for everybody this evening?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank
you, Jessica.
Thank you, guys. All right. We will see you next Friday.
Dear Connecticut Homeschool Network members, alumni, and supporters. From the beginning, CHN has been powered by volunteers, parents just like you, dedicated to protecting the freedom to homeschool in Connecticut. For decades, we've stood watch, provided resources, and worked tirelessly to ensure that parental rights remain strong in our state. Now, we are preparing for something unprecedented, an effort designed to strengthen and protect the freedoms of every homeschooling family in Connecticut for years to come. Because of the sensitivity of the work, we must move forward with great care. What we can tell you is this: the project is both urgent and historic, and it will directly serve the cause of parental rights and educational freedom. Here's where you come in. Imagine if every family in our community gave just $1 for each child they homeschool. Together, that kind of united support would put us in a powerful position to not only meet this critical moment, but to create a lasting impact for all. No amount is too small, and every contribution matters. Your support today ensures CHN can continue to do what has never been done before. Let's show what is possible when we stand together. On behalf of your Connecticut Homeschool Network Board of Directors, we thank you for your generous contributions.